Well, I'm Jules, and I live in Hawaii, Papaloa, Hawaii, the Big Island. I guess I could talk about my first experience with loss, and that was when my ex-husband and I, we were married pretty young, and I experienced a few losses with children in utero. We divorced about 7 years later, and he met this beautiful girl, and I met this pretty amazing guy. His name was Brian, and we had just planned to take a short trip to Arizona and back, and on the way to pick me up at the airport in Arizona, he was in a fatal car accident and hit head-on by an 18-wheeler. So I went home with a flight attendant that night, and she somehow got me back home. So I came home and started planning his funeral, and I remember telling myself I couldn't grieve because my father had 2 months to live. He was diagnosed with inoperable cancer. So I went from burying my fiance to my father dying and my godfather passing away and my biological father, all within 10 months. So that was a pretty heavy load. I wasn't exactly sure how to deal with it. I sort of seeked outward. I felt broken. So at that time, I was a marketing executive. I decided to quit after that, after many years with them, and go to nursing school. And about 6 years after my fiance died, this is hard for me I don't know how to say this. So I met somebody, and before you knew it, I was pregnant, and I was moving him into my house, and we were trying to figure things out, and sort of start a blended family, and that lasted for about a year and a half. I ended up getting pregnant and having a baby boy, and his name is Seth. And by the time Seth was about a year and a half, or just over a year old, Seth's dad moved away back to his home state of Georgia, and we didn't hear from him until he was about 7 years old. Anyway, so I was a single mom once again with 3 beautiful children, working at the hospital, quite a lot of number of hours to maintain my home and my vehicles and anything that they needed. And things were going pretty well until Seth got into kindergarten, and he was struggling a little bit. He was a little bit hyperactive, had on the spectrum, ADHD, I think possibly autistic. So a couple days there, actually, it got to the point where he didn't want to go to school. He was dreading school. It was really difficult for him to function. I really didn't have a whole lot of support. My daughters, Sinclair and Sophia, helped me tremendously with Seth so I could work. But by the time Sinclair graduated and Sophia was ready to go on to college herself, there wasn't a lot of family support. So I moved to Fidalgo Island, which is in the next county over, and they had an excellent school. I enrolled Seth there, and by the time he was in 2nd grade, he was only allowed to be at school for 3 hours a day, from 9 to noon. And so I and that was a struggle also. It was a struggle for him. He was so brave to do something that just made him so nervous. But I would drop him off at school, and sometimes I would sit in the parking lot in my car and wait for him to get done. And I would let him know that if he needed me, I was there. I was out in the parking lot. This also led to me struggling with finances, being able to bring enough money in to put a roof over our heads. So I kept downsizing. I went from a cheaper home to a cheaper home, then renting a room in someone else's home. And at one point, I actually couldn't afford anything, so I got us a tent site at the local campground. And I was going to do that until I could save up enough money, and it would allow myself to be there for my son. And well, the state got word of that, and that coupled with the fact that Seth was not really wanting to go to school, they came and picked him up from me because I failed to provide for him. So it was very surreal. I couldn't believe that it was happening. I had a lot of guilt. I felt like a failure as a mom. And again, the first person I called was my daughter, Sophia, and my other daughter, Sinclair. They were my support. We were an excellent team together, but I just didn't know how to provide, to be, there with him when he was at home, but also provide, working and bringing enough funds in to support our household. Sophia, my youngest daughter, spent a lot of time with me out on Fidalgo Island. We did a small research project. It was a government-funded research project where we were researching harbor porpoise, dolphins. We started connecting with nature, and basically in doing so, we quieted our mind, we calmed our mind. We realized that, we went from having a pretty big place, but yet I was always working, to something so little and simple. And we realized that our riches came from not what we could provide for ourselves externally, but what we had inside of us all along. And it's not something that you have to find because you always have it. You just uncover it bit by bit, and that's what we did together. And it was an amazing experience, and it was poetic because together we placed ourselves in the best possible place for what was yet to come. Sophia was on her way to a Thomas Rhett concert, and she was in a car. She was driving with 3 other girls, and the car rolled, and Sophia had her window down. There was no alcohol involved, no drugs. Sophia hit her head on the pavement and died instantly, and the other 3 girls were physically okay, but experienced such a loss. They lost their best friend in that accident. I got the phone call, and I knew something had happened, and Sinclair called me, and I said, "What's going on?" And I said, "Is it Seth?" "No." She says, "No." "What's going on?" And then she handed the phone to her dad, and her dad said, "It's Sophia." And then I screamed. I remember after initially being upset, just sort of recounting our time together out on the island, our insights, our the uncovering of our wisdom that we have, and then feeling an overwhelming feeling of honor, because I was her mom. I got to raise her. I got to experience her. She got to call me mom, and I got to carry her in my tummy, and nobody else did. Me, I got to do that. And what a beautiful girl she was, but she still is. Non-physically, she's so powerful and so strong. She's so present. I just remember that I was sitting on the grass and there were other family members there having a really hard time, screaming and fainting. And I remember thinking, what is it? Why do I have a calmness? What is it? And it's that innate intelligence that Sophia and I learned about out on the island, or that we uncovered, that we got in touch with, that everybody has. Every single person has this. So I stayed out at my ex-husband's for a couple days, and we planned her funeral. And it took a little bit for her physical body, to come back. But when it did, I wanted to go see her. And everybody thought that was a horrible idea, but nobody was going to stop me. I signed papers to go in and see her. This was August 5th. However, also on August 5th, I was in the middle of a custody battle with Seth's dad, and so I had to decide what I needed to do. Go see my daughter's body, or go to court. Chose to go see my daughter for the last time, and because I didn't want them to cover her up and put on all of this makeup. I wanted to see her just as I knew her. So I signed all these papers, went in, and I chose a friend to come with me. Her name is Dawn, and she was an amazing nurse that I worked with for years at the hospital. So she came in with me, and immediately, as soon as I walked in, it was just, her body was scratched, and she had a bandage where she needed to have a bandage, but everything else was beautiful. I was able to stand there and talk to the mortician and his assistant, and just tell them stories about her, about what it was like to be her mom and what it was like to raise her as a child. So a few things happened. I realized that I was one blessed mom, one amazingly blessed individual for having such a beautiful family and having to experience that. Some people don't get to experience that, but I did. And it might have been short-lived to some, but to me, it was just such a blessing. I connected with that innate intelligence again, and also thought about Seth. I thought, what am I doing? I'm fighting in a custody battle, but yet I'm on my own. I'm on my own when it comes to being there for him, to work, to provide. It's just me. I didn't have a support system. So I described it to somebody as keeping a little beautiful bird captive when he should be free to experience love, and I'm keeping him for myself. And I think, what am I doing? What am I doing? His dad has such a beautiful, huge family. I mean, 2 sets of grandparents, a baby sister. He's remarried to and now he has a stepmom, and so much love, so many arms to wrap around him, and I was fighting to keep him with me. So I let him go. So shortly after my experience with Sophia, I guess I dug a little deeper inside of my heart and soul and decided that this is the most loving thing I could ever do. It hurt, it was painful, but if you just embrace it and accept what it is, you only need to do that once, because there's no changing it. You just accept, embrace, like a contraction, like labor pains. Everything is always working out. Everything is falling into place if you follow that true feeling that's deep inside of your heart, untouched by thought, that innate intelligence. It will never fail you. So shortly after Sophia's funeral, Seth went to go live with his dad. And he has a puppy and a baby sister. And a full family. I guess I'd like to say that life doesn't happen to you. Life wasn't happening to me. It was just happening. And I guess if you embrace, accept, there's a shift. There's clarity that comes with that. There's a calmness in your heart. There's peace. And that's what helped me. Everything is okay. Everything is always okay. Yeah. So Sophia was on her way to see Thomas Rhett, and he got word that she didn't make it to his concert, and he dedicated a song to her, and that went viral.
There was this girl named Sophia and 3 of her friends that were driving to Watershed, I think 2 nights ago. And she was a fan of mine, and I think she was super pumped to be here, and it really sucks, man. She passed away on the way here in a car crash, which is terrible. But her family and friends reached out and asked if I would dedicate a song to her, and
shortly after that, I started receiving messages on Facebook, people sharing that they have lost children or they have experienced loss. And the beautiful thing is that I was able to communicate with them. I didn't know how I did it or what I said, but I call it word vomit, other people call it wisdom. But I was able just to let them know of that innate intelligence that's inside of them. Connect with love, not by searching, but by uncovering. And then after that, I received about 1,000 friend requests and hundreds of messages on Facebook. And her memorial went from a few hundred people to about 2,000 people. And I remember just before the memorial wanting to speak to everybody, not as a grieving mom, but as somebody who could tuck their hearts in, who could help them uncover, point them in the direction of this love that's always there inside of them, that they're never alone, and that they can get in touch with it too. I took a little trip. I told my ex-husband I was just going to be gone for 6 months, and that was about 2.5 years ago. But I went up to Yosemite to Honeywell Ranch for about 4 months. And after spending time there within the season, I decided I wasn't going to go back home to Washington, so I flew to the Big Island. And I've been here ever since. When I was standing there looking down at my daughter, her physical body, I had so much love. I had so much love for life, for nature, for being able to not only experience raising her and being her mom and experiencing her as a child, but also being grateful and honored that I had the ability to perceive that. Love just is. Love is that innate intelligence that gets covered up. Love is the quietness. Love is that feeling that's deep inside of your heart, untouched by thought. That's love. It always remains. It's always there. It's always with you. So after that, and staying connected with that feeling, that innate intelligence, I decided that Seth needed to go with his dad. And love can be painful, but it's still beautiful. It's still amazingly beautiful. It's a gift. We all have it. It's everywhere. You loved him enough to let him go. Oh gosh, yes. I would never change a thing. Never change a thing. My life is beautiful, and I'm so honored to be living it. So honored to be experiencing it. I am so honored and grateful to be able to perceive life, my life experience now, and also have the ability to help others and share this with others, point them in the direction as best I can. Let them know that they're not alone, never alone. There's nothing wrong with feeling loving, with connecting to that love when something so traumatic happens. There's nothing wrong at all. And you're okay. Like I said, you're gonna have, like I have plenty of Sophia and Seth cry days. And Dad and Brian cry days. But the beautiful thing is that you're connected to that innate intelligence. You know that it's always there, and you know that your pain will pass. You just flow with it, embrace it, and accept it, and cry, and know that it'll pass.